Oh, hello, and welcome to this conversation with myself, Neil Harrison, and Ali Uren. We'll be doing some introductions in a second. But what we're going to be talking about today is why AI is shifting leaders and leadership to facilitation or facilitators. And we'll be looking at three things in particular in the detail. But let's do some introductions. Ali, perhaps you wouldn't mind starting and introducing yourself.
Sure, and thanks, Neil. Good to be back with you. I always enjoy our conversations. It's been a while, but always get a lot of value from it, as do the listeners and the people that join us. So I'm Ali Uren, founder of Kickstart, creator of the Circular Workplace, and my work is really working with brands that want to make sure that they're not wasting human IP and intelligence by really using circularity and circular thinking and business practice. So I know we're going to talk about the circular workplace and set that up afterwards, but yeah, I'm basically on a mission to make sure that we create environments of zero waste work, because we talk a lot about other business waste, but when it comes to intelligence and our experiences and our wisdom, our mistakes, we don't tend to do particularly well in terms of not just capturing it, but repurposing it back into the business. So that's why the company exists, and that's why I keep getting up in the morning.
That's fantastic. So, and I'm Neil Harrison, so I'm the founder of the Adaptologists, and we provide learning and advisory solutions for AI change leadership. So we're very much focused on the people dimensions of change, how organizations are changing over time with AI, basically. And I've been in change leadership for 25 years. I've worked with big brands as well as small companies, both as a consultant and internal employee. And I've had the privilege to have worked and lived in Australia, where Ali is dialing in from, for 3 years, and also the States. I was there for 3 years as well. So let me just a little bit of context to the conversation, just so anyone new to this channel has some context. So, Ali, you and we've been connected for over 2 years now, and through that time, what I've found personally is when you talk about particular activities that you're addressing through your circular workplace, I see a very deep resonance with the kind of work that I do, albeit I'm coming at it from a change leadership angle, and you're coming at it from a slightly different sort of L&D and HR sort of angle. Nonetheless, inevitably, what we're talking about is the context in which people operate, and we are talking about people. And so what I have found over that 2 years is just how much of what you talk about helps me to reflect on my work with a slightly different lens. I find that extremely valuable. Now, Ali, you produced an article the other day, which I thought was extraordinary. It was brilliant. And we really ought to share that link somehow in this chat. I'm not quite sure how to. I'll put a comment on the recording. And in that, what I really wanted to do was tease out some of the key dimensions of what you describe in that paper, and why in particular this is so relevant to what I'm seeing in AI. So a lot of that, of course, is framed in the context of your circular workplace, which you've mentioned, and this idea of leaders as facilitators. So perhaps you could give us just a brief overview of what that is, just some context around it.
Yeah, sure. And it's a big subject. But so basically, if you look at the circular workplace, and if you go online, go onto the website, come on and follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see I talk about it a lot. But the circular workplace is based on 4 key elements. So plan, build, debrief, analyse, and the 4th one being utilised. So it's about how we take the daily experiences that we have and how we repurpose them back into new value. So new commercial value, new people value as well too. So it is not about the leader holding all the knowledge or all the intel. Yeah. So this is a process or an approach that is owned by the people, that being the solutions are owned by the people, not the experts. So an important role as a facilitator is that person is joining the dots, so to speak, Neil, right? So the easiest way, and it will make sense as we move through the examples that we're going to go through today, is that they are like the digital dot connector. If we just take it from an AI perspective, yeah? So they are helping their team make sense of the changing world in which they work and live within and deliver it as well too. So I've done a lot of work in the last 18 years in building leaders as facilitators. A lot of my work is in the facilitation space and bringing those key elements across into leadership in a way that people can use regardless of industry and role. But what we're actually doing is that we're making sure that through facilitation, that those leaders are creating places and spaces that are fluid, yeah, that are allowing, that can move. They're not so rigid, yeah. And I think that that is incredibly important, particularly in a digital space and an AI and tech space as well too. So if you think about it, the facilitator holds the roadmap. They hold it lightly, yeah, and the team, and they then work with the team, build the capacity and the capability within the team to navigate, to analyse, to make sense of that route, to change course where they need to. So facilitation is really about building that talent in other people as well. Facilitation doesn't stay with one person. It moves through. And a particularly important point that I'm writing more about as well too, through my own realisation, is that everyone is a context creator, yeah? And a key part of facilitation is making sure that the team is able to interpret context in the right way so that they're also getting the best of AI. And so the facilitator oversees that work and builds that talent in others and helps oversee the process. But they're not the ones holding on to it, yeah? They are the ones that allow people ultimately to find their own solutions to their own problems. So I hope that just gives people a high-level overview, yeah, about what the circular workplace is in a nutshell and why the role of facilitation is so important, because we're moving people through that process and that approach as well too, but in a way that is fluid, Neil, far more responsive. Yeah.
I think that, and the things that sort of leap out for me in that around what I think we need for AI and why AI is driving a need for that kind of approach is we just don't have the answers anymore. We can't predict the future anymore. And so in much of the change work we do, we tend to predict the future and then kind of draw a line to transition towards it. Well, that's just not possible with the pace at which AI is accelerating. And so your idea of, loosely holding the road mapping and adjusting as you go is a key feature, I think, of how we need to approach AI adoption. It's that sense of we know where the organization wants to go, but let's not be too specific about the steps we take and be prepared to adapt. So I really like that. And of course, the other aspect around including people in the co-design, in the co-creation of that route helps to reduce risk and fear and that kind of thing.
Very much so. And the other thing too is because of the way in which it's designed, and there's always the analysis, the review, the assessment of where we're at as throughout those 4 stages, is that we also do something that's incredibly important, is we're reducing ambiguity as well. Yeah. So ambiguity is a disease. It has such an effect on people. Look, we're living in the world is ambiguity defined, but which means then we as leaders need to remove those sources of ambiguity where we can. Yeah, where we can. Not every source can be, but many can be. Yeah. So the facilitator also comes in and plays a role in that too, Neil, around how the narrative is told and how we make sense of ambiguity and how we can thrive actually in times of adversity. So
yeah, brilliant. So that's really helpful context. So what I've got 3 topics I'm really interested in hearing your view on. So the first is that you described the need for rapid reskilling.
Yeah.
And perhaps you can just unpick for us what the risks or the challenges are of that, and then potentially we can get into what can we do about those things.
Sure. So the first thing is, the need for rapid reskilling. So there's a lot of focus on skilling at the moment, Neil. Yeah, upskilling, reskilling, skilling. But unfortunately, so we want people to learn faster, right? Like fast is rewarded as well. But unfortunately, fast or rapid reskilling leads to a lack of depth and understanding, and a lack of context as well too. So when people are having to try and learn something quickly, this is what we tend to see within that, right? And we're not actually having proper conversations. So we want people to skill up, but what is not happening is that we're not having leaders and their teams sit down and really discuss how that skilling is going to be used back in for return on the skills, not just for the individual, but actually for the team and the broader organisation and the client, right? Like, so when we're wanting people to rapidly reskill, we're not talking about what benefit that will bring to the person in the role and the business, or how do they want to use it. We're not having the discussion around, well, what does great actually look like, what in terms of outcomes and impacts. And then we're not actually engaging the person in, well, what will look different, once I do this. So with rapid reskilling, this is what we don't understand, is that you need time for it to percolate, right? Like you need time to understand it, to reflect on it, to make sense of it, And so when we are pushing people to just keep reskilling at such a rapid rate, it's almost like a layer cake where we're layering on, there's no scaffolded learning in that. Now that's a solution and we'll go there in a minute. So what does happen if we continue this behaviour? Well, we get burnout and overwhelm. That's the first thing. So people are just overwhelmed by the expectation around what they've got to be able to do, and by the time that they've got to do that, right, the actual volume and speed of it, it's just too much, right? So we also suffer from a lack of space and time to actually put these skills into practice and map it back to role and project delivery. If you were to go to most leaders and say, hey, bring me up all your learning and development plans, and I'll probably go, we don't have too many, and show me where the latest investment in skilling for each employee, how that actually mapped back to units of competency and project deliverables, I would be quite confident in saying that you won't get much. So the risk from that is obviously wasted investment, negative bottom line, disengaged and disconnected staff, who feel that, again, I'm going to another training course and it is actually leading nowhere. So we start to see a disconnect between employee, project and purpose of the organisation as well. So it does actually have rapid reskilling. I always say make more space for light. Make more space for light. Slow down, you will get better outcomes. It doesn't mean you're not going to make any progress and start to see outcomes, but you must start to be fair and reasonable and work in consultation with your team around what they're able to do, what their capacity is too, Neil. Like this is a discussion. It can't be a top-down directive. And that's why when we disconnect people from their learning, we don't tend to get much in return.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So a couple of things on the AI side. What we typically have seen is that the AI tool is bought, the training is rolled out, you get a couple of hours training on the tool, and then people are kind of left to their own devices. And two things strike me about that. One is almost certainly that training is out of date in 3 months from now.
Yes, that's a very important point.
We think about ChatGPT even, it's probably had 10 major upgrades since it launched. So it misses the point, and it misses the context of how that application is being used. The second thing that I've been thinking quite a bit about recently is around, actually, the more complex the situation is that we're in, and you need sort of a technical view and you need sort of expertise in different areas to come together as a team to achieve an outcome of some kind. It seems to me learning becomes much more a team activity.
Yes. 100%.
And not just an individual activity. So this isn't about sheep dipping people through training courses, but about through that experimentation in collaboration with others, what are we learning as a team and how do we share that knowledge across the organisation?
100%. And that's fundamental to the circular workplace, right? That we move beyond the me benefit, which is what traditional skilling does. It begins and ends with the individual rather than the we and the collective benefit to it, right? And you're right, that is so important for a lot of reasons. One, again, we're sharing, dispersing the talent amongst the team, and we're minimising the risk of digital brain drain as well too, right? When we just have to stay with an individual, Neil. So, yeah, I've got a couple of ideas around, certainly around the rapid reskilling, what we can do with that. So I'm happy to go there when you want to, but I definitely think it's not a viable option to keep doing what I consider as being that's sort of like hitting like a dead end when it begins and ends, and it's up to the individual about how they want to share it. Do you know what I mean? And when they leave, it leaves.
Yeah.
It's just not smart business.
Yeah. Did you want to
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So look, there's a lot of things around this, but I'm going to share one in particular. And again, you have to be disciplined as well too, Neil. Yeah. So the thing that I want to share with the community, and it's something that I've used for a long time that has continually delivered. And of course, you'll have to evolve it as you need to, but scaffolded learning, the process of scaffolded learning is incredibly important and very, very impactful. Yeah. So I've written about this before as well too. So scaffolded learning, if I just verbally and take people through it, it is being smart, and you'll know this as soon as we start to talk about AI, in the scheduling of what you want people to learn. So you don't just come in and go, here you go, here's a massive topic, here's something that's quite complex that you've never really been exposed to before, and now you're going to learn it in half a day or whatever. Yeah. So it is actually basically layering the learning in terms of complexity and obviously, logical flow. But what we do within that is that we don't just layer and facilitate in one big block. We are allowing time for that person, once they've learnt, to reflect, to have discussions around how they want to use it, to actually start going back and using it in real time. Yeah. To start to be able to then experiment, get intel from that, lessons, make some mistakes. We'll talk about that in a minute. Come back, debrief, verbalise that with their team, with their leaders around what was working, what did you learn, and more importantly, from what you learned, how do you want to share that in a way that's going to benefit the company and other people, not just yourself? And that is a really important question to ask, right? And then you can see, so from those lessons, we then go back, we have another go, right? And we don't move on to the next topic or scope of learning until we have evidence and agree that we are competent and confident in that particular scope of learning.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because otherwise you're just overburdened with all sorts of things happening.
It's not quality, Neil. Yeah. You don't understand it at the depth, right? Like, look, I need to get a life maybe, right? But I spend my weekends, playing around with AI and building things, and that's my, part of my business, and I love it, right? But I had to create the time for that, right? And I'm not saying people that are employed by other people need to do that, but what I'm saying is be fair and reasonable about the amount of time that it needs, and headspace, not pressured from Jenny from accounts to give you this report, like just proper time to really learn it, to when you have a challenge, to be able to, troubleshoot, to say, why is it doing that, right? Like to have a conversation with someone. It is an investment. So that is one thing I would say too from personal experience. You need to be prepared to make the investment when you might not immediately see every return that you want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it doesn't work like that, Neil. You know this. This is not, add water, shake, and there you go. You'll deliver the outcome or the impact.
Exactly. And if it's important, you'll make time, and I think it's about almost asking what we stop in order to make the time for this, not at it, side of the desk, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Look, 100%. And I mean, that's going to come into one of our points later around job evolution. But if we're going to add something, this is what I will say before we move on. If we're going to add something to a role, then we must subtract something from a role.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And we're not doing it. We need to.
Yeah. Let's move on to the mistake economy. And perhaps what I, in the interest of time, what I propose is that that's a natural follow-on to some extent, I think, from the conversation we've just been having. Quite interested in the real-time job evolution piece. So if we can perhaps do a shorter version of the mistake economy, challenges, risks, and solutions on that, and then we can.
So over to me, no problem. And look, again, these are big topics, but this is a taster to get people to start to think differently around it. Yeah. Okay. So the deal is, as we learn more and as we are exposed to new things and have to trial and experiment, we're going to make mistakes now, right? That's a natural part of learning something. And it's also a natural part of being innovative and ingenious as well too. So what we need to be able to do is say, okay, how do we build that into our roles? How do we build that into our projects? How do we build that into the personality of our organisation as well too? So the way in which I have done that and do that and encourage people to think about that is actually making that space and time for people to just be able to, as we said, to be able to play with it, to be able to experiment, to be able to build with it, but more importantly, to have a space and a designated time where they can come back and share that, in a way that is not shame, that removes the fear from it. That's a risk that we're going to talk about in a minute. So I make dedicated time every week to this so that people can come and talk about that and debrief on it, And so right away, rather than ruminate on it, they have a proper structure that they can follow, that they own, that allows them to actually move through it. So to make sense of it, right? To say, where was that mistake and near miss? How do I move from there to either letting it go or actually there's value in that, more importantly? What's the process then now to develop that to the next stage as part of that circular thinking and doing, whereby we can then use that to actually, create new commercial value for me and my colleagues to grow from that experience. So again, it's about being ingenious and understanding that, but allowing the leaders to be able to facilitate those conversations is incredibly important. So, we need to make it part of our role. We need to put it into job descriptions. We need to show how we're going to support it. The risk, and I'm mindful of time, the risk of inaction from this, Neil, you'll not know what they are because you see them yourself, because you've been in those environments, is that we have cultures of fear. We have people that are not free, they're not well, they're worried about being caught out, they're not safe environments. And so they're not good from a commercial point of view or productivity point of view, but they're not good from a wellbeing point of view either.
Yeah.
We don't get to see where we could be ingenious, and coming up with ideas that have value if we can't make mistakes then in order to be able to debrief and support each other. So we need mentorship as part of that. We don't just learn from mistakes, it's an action process. And that means that we actually have that capability and the capacity to make it a regular part of any project and role delivery. So guess what happens? It becomes normal. Everyone does it. The leader does it too, Neil. This is part, like I said, I've been in the space for 18 years. There's very few people that have said, because they know why we're doing it. They know the benefits. They know I'm rocking up, being part of it, and then going to go through the same experience as well. And so it's becoming normalised, right? But the mistake economy, I think, is really going to be differentiated for the ones that are still playing around with tools and the ones that are actually going to truly differentiate themselves in a rather homogenised market.
It's really interesting because I sort of coming back to this idea, if we can't predict the future and we can't determine a destination, then really anything towards forward progress is about learning, and we are learning and we are seizing the opportunities and avoiding the risks as we go, rather than if we make a mistake, we're not going to achieve our destination. Well, if we don't know the destination, it's not a mistake. And so for me, there's something about we are creating through our experiments knowledge, insights, data, evidence that we are assimilating and then determining what our next step is.
Yes.
So there's never mistakes in that approach.
No.
It's just data, it's learning, it's understanding. And so we take that data in, we take that knowledge in, and then we adjust and we adapt and we move forward.
Can I say something on that though? And I've written about this a lot because I've proved it a lot in the last 18 years, and this is just a key part of my work. If we're really going to not fear mistakes and do something really valuable with them, then we need to reject the premise to only focus on strengths, Neil.
Yeah.
And that is not a normal way of people thinking, right? Because you've always been brought up your whole life to think about, to focus on your strengths. But the reality is, in the world in which we're living in, your strengths aren't going to solve everything coming your way. Neither are mine. Neither is the person that's watching this in the middle of England or wherever they are. So we need to keep evolving in the right way, not haphazard, quick, fast skills, but in a way that is considered, intentional and strategic. So, yeah, I wanted to, and I'm going to do some show notes from this as well too, Neil, all right? So that we capture all the goodness as well for people.
And that's very interesting, because it also highlights the gaps that we have as individually, that we develop ourselves, but we also bring into the team if we need that expertise. Let's move on to real-time job evolution. So do you want to, again, challenges and risks around that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's go back. Neil, I'm sure you've seen a couple of job roles in your time as well too, yeah? Most of them, again, they were always quite dusty and antiquated, and now they are becoming dinosaurs very, very quick, yeah? So what we're seeing is through this is that the roles are just not evolving at the pace in which they need to be able to be relevant and deliver the outcomes and the impacts that are required. So as a facilitative leader, the key element around that is that the facilitative leader will work with their team and as individuals and maybe as teams where relevant to make sure that the design of the role is always top of mind. So they're always engaging in ongoing conversation, based on, the other elements that we've just talked around, the playing, the experimentation, doing the job for real, the mistakes, near misses, that they are coming together and co-designing the roles so that they actually reflect. And again, this is why I think people start to get a feel that it's not just one element, it's a connected ecosystem, whereby they are sitting down with their team and saying, hang on, where have the greatest lessons been, the compounding wisdom? How do we then now repurpose that back into the role? Which means if we're going to add new value into the role, we need to take something out that is no longer as of high value. Yeah. And so they're sitting down with their teams and understanding how, and it's not a one and done, it is an ongoing piece of work that we embed into the operations and the debriefs and the conversations around how those roles need to be evolving, and also to how we're going to measure them. How do we assess their value? So that is a discussion and a piece of work that a facilitative leader will develop.
Yeah.
So go Neil before I talk about some of the risks and challenges that come off of not doing that.
Yeah, I was just going to say in an AI, just to kind of bring an AI dimension to that. Clearly, when we are, and in particular with things like AI agents that are making decisions, within constraints, and agentic AI that is outcome focused, it has agency and is focused on achieving an outcome. This fundamentally changes how we work and where we want that AI to be introduced. And so if all we're doing is focusing on improving the processes I've always done and keeping my job as it always was, just not doing some of the mundane stuff, it misses the opportunity to fundamentally redesign how we work through that capability.
And how can you do one without the other?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't introduce new projects, you can't introduce new tech unless the roles actually move and complement it, right? And can be mapped back to that as well. So the risks that I see from that is that we're continuing to invest in roles that are no longer, not just fit for purpose, but are actually going to meet the needs of the business. We lose good talent, because their role has stayed stagnant and it's failed to grow, with them and their talent and their skill set as well too. And I think, like I said, we see a disconnect between people's role and how it feeds back in, not just into the project and the department, but how it helps deliver, those bigger organisational goals. So for me personally, it's not only about the human. We want the human to obviously show up as their best person and do good on what they have to bring to the table. But it's an economical decision as well too, right?
Yeah.
Like, why am I paying you? And this is not even relevant. No, it means it's not right. Like I said, money is precious, right? I mean, you can't re-spend money. Once it's gone, right? So this is the waste factor again, right? This is the waste factor. And we've got to get real. There's a lot of fakery, guys. I sound like bloody Trump, but there's a lot of fake jobs. There's a lot of fakery in what is happening out there too, right? So we need to get real and say, if we're going to have these roles, what do they need to look like? What are they delivering? What are they no longer delivering? What's got value but needs to look different? What must go because it's not of value? And work with the people to have honest adult conversation around that as well too.
Mm.
But the gap is widening. The gap is widening. We're not, they're just not continually designed in a way, that is able to keep pace with the reality in which we're doing business. So that's got a whole lot of risk attached to it. So hopefully, as I said, by making sure that we're keeping that co-design top of mind, those regular checking points, that we're not allowing us to look up, 6 months later and say, gee, I haven't looked at Gary's role for a while. What's happening there? Not much. So,
and I think there's something there for line managers, middle managers, as a part of an ongoing activity, isn't there? This can't be we'll do this in our 6 month review kind of conversation.
Performance reviews in the way in which they're done are just over. They've never been probably really helpful, but now they're really actually quite risky.
Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to add to that point?
Look, I think, something that I want to just sort of say on the end of this, and Neil, I always enjoy spending some time with you, and I know that there's a lot that we can go through here. But I think, as we think about AI, the challenges, the risks and the opportunities that it's producing, that we look at that facilitating. And I'm going to be doing some more work in the space that the community can get involved with as well. So I'll share that down the track, Neil. But that we're thinking about what does a facilitative model of leadership, look like? And it is built for an AI world. It is built for one where there is uncertainty and we need to connect the dots in a different way. So I would be getting any leader who has a team who's listening to this, saying, asking a question around, are you really facilitating that talent, those experiences? Are you understanding what they look like for your team? Or are you merely just paying people to show up and share, have some skills and use them, every now and then? Very different realities. So we've got a choice to make. And I think we can't keep layering. And why the facilitative leadership piece is so important is that it helps make sense of an increasingly complex world. When you're having all these experiences, like you said, Neil, of this tool or, using something in the workplace, those experiences and insights and organisational memory have to land somewhere.
Yeah.
They have to, otherwise they're wasted, right? So, and they obviously just, they're learning leaks that leave, right? So it is important for the human that they also get to be able to develop that to its full capacity. It is important for the business that they turn them into new assets, rather than leave it. And again, without the circular workplace or facilitative leadership, we're floundering and we are using, like you've said right at the beginning, processes, approaches, relationships that are just no longer going to deliver what we would need them to. So hopefully our conversation today has given people some practical, proven ways to, consider those three key elements. Because I do agree with you. I think they have been for some time, and I do think they're the three areas that will define organisations and their teams.
It's fascinating, Ali, and thank you for your insights and experience and sharing your wisdom. I think just for me to sort of sum up, what really leaps out at me in all this is this idea that we can predict the future, that leaders have the answers, that I don't think that world exists, certainly not in an AI context anymore. And I think for me, the beauty about facilitation is the value we bring as leaders is knowing what questions to ask, not having the answers.
Right.
And I think through that asking, not tasking approach, we both address the fear that people have because they're included, but we also get better responses. We get better ideas and better development and better learning as we go. And I think, it's absolutely spot on for me. And
as I said, and the other thing too, Neil, I want to say is when we're having genuine, adult dialogue and asking those respectfully curious questions, we're going to get insights into gaps and threats and risk we weren't even aware of. So we've got the opportunity together to see ahead and to respond to a crisis before we get in the middle of it. Is that not valuable? That's hugely valuable. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Exactly.
But the world looks different, but we can still enjoy it and we can do great work. So I've enjoyed my time with you, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you know, in the interest of continuous learning as well, I'm always learning when we have conversations. So I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and smarts with us. And gosh, I've got a load of ideas for next time we talk as well.
Good. Let's do it. Let's do it when I get back from my overseas jaunt, God willing. But no, it'll be good. And again, this is not a one and done conversation. So thanks for allowing us to share some headspace together.
Thank you very much for your time. And if for those people listening and tuning in, don't follow Ali, look her up on Ali Uren, look her up on LinkedIn, and yeah, follow her content. So thank you very much.
Thank you.